That's why I call myself the Gnostic Warrior. I believe there's a war of knowledge, and there has been for thousands of years, right? Knowledge is power. And that's what I see the difference between, say, people like you and me. We're connected via the higher mind, these ideas. That's why we're drawn to each other. We want to talk about them. We're interested in, and I see this connection with other people that I have on my podcast. And the other people, I'm literally repelled.
The more you have easy answers for everything, the more you don't search for yourself. If you want to succeed in academia, if you want to succeed in the university and in any institution, you don't ask questions. That's the main thing. You don't ask questions. You just accept the answers they give to you. So we don't have the circumstances to question the dogmas, to question all the answers that we are given when we are kids. It all starts in providing space for the individual to experience whatever, but just experience it firsthand. That's the first thing. And from that point, maybe eventually we will turn off the TV. And then suddenly what you notice is that those people who you thought that they had an education, conscience, or whatever, suddenly they seem like strangers. Yeah, so it's always the same story. The demonic forces of an age, they're total, they act everywhere. The only salvation we have against those forces is to have space for ourselves and for our own experience, because that's what makes us human. Where's the starting point? Ourselves. In the moment, we no longer use that which made us humans, which is our intellect, which is our capacity for knowledge, which is that what makes us interact with each other, to share that knowledge and to increase that knowledge, to make it more richer. In that moment, we're no longer humans anymore. That moment, we go to the recycle bin, as you said. There's a point when we observe that people are dominated when it comes to action and decision and responsibility. You know, like for example, there are so many scientific studies that are really worthless that are done today because they lack the human aspect of it. We're just so self-satisfied that we're so smart because we know how to Google things, that at the end, that's the best state of mind, so that all these powers that are taking advantage of their capacity to control the media say, okay, so these people are surrender so much to information. What a prey. If you have knowledge, then information makes sense. But if you don't have knowledge, gnosis, information is going to control you.
It really puts the power in the powers that be's hands to have these people that lack gnosis, that lack knowledge, that haven't done the work, that don't have experiential knowledge, to give them the power. And it's scary.
At the end, we're looking for language that allows us to understand ourselves.
Do you believe it was the Western culture of individualism that created the Western mind, where we're all in our own reality tunnel? I had this.
Yes, in the European traditions, which are those which I feel more familiar with, there is the idea always that in all of the traditions all around Europe, which is I've studied and I feel familiar with it naturally, is that knowledge doesn't belong to us. We just, as individuals, we can only may aspire towards it, and even, let's put it in these words, update it in the conditions of our time, but it's not ours as individuals. So that goes against most of the ideas of the power of the individual to create, to generate their arbitrary form of knowledge based on, let's say, opinion. And most of the traditions encourage, through myth and through legend, the individual to say, okay, you're just a part of something much greater than you. So here are the steps, and at the end there's a mystery, because the knowledge that is the light, let's say in the 16th century, for those conditions of the humans in the 16th century, is not the same, let's say, as those in the 20th century. So the light is the same, it's just that the spectrum differs depending on the conditions of the time. So it's like this feeling of awe towards something that's greater than you, that can make you approach that knowledge. But first we have to gain that initiation, that awe of being in a universe that's much greater than us. Yeah, first it's just that we're reaching, if we look at specific traditions, even many, they all converge basically into one aspect in regard to the concept of time, and is that time is by cycles. It's not linear, it's not chronological, as generally we tend to believe in physics, or most physics. We tend to think that every second is the same as the next in terms of properties. So now we're living a very specific period, the 2020-2030 period, which was already pointed out in many traditions as a critical point for humanity. It's precisely in these traditions where there's the idea that you don't have to understand it, but it will happen. There will be cycles of time, and there are critical points for humanity. But there's all these powers that really want to manipulate people through their fears. So, oh, I'm not going to be able to do what I used to do. I'm not going to be able to get to my normality. So they deny the basic aspects, the humanity of the individuals. They deny them to control them. And that's the ace on the sleeve, let's put it this way. The traditional man and woman have to face real challenges in their everyday life. But today's context, both for men and women, is that they have to challenge ghosts that emerge in their mind as a consequence that they're living in a world that is mediated by TV, by all sort of stereotypes that appear to be like what we have to follow to fulfill our archetype either of man or woman stereotypes. So I think that's the key point that changed, that it's not about, today it's all about feeling the ego of what a man and a woman ought to be, in the sense that we all have to fulfill our highest goal. But the thing is that there were situations in the past that people didn't have time for this mediation and say, look, if I don't act as a man and the woman, if she didn't act as a woman, they simply wouldn't survive.
What can you direct people? Where's the best place for people to find your great work?
It's my website. It's www.thesolarwarrior.com.
Well, and what do you feel people will get from your books if you're to share these ideas into the noosphere, to the world? What is the main idea that you're trying to get through? I know, of course, there's several, and you have operative traditions. What are they going to learn from you?
First, you got the first trilogy, which is the Warrior trilogy. It's 3 books, 3 essays, and basically that's all about an archetype of how we, as our heroic tendency of how the human has challenged the ego, has changed according to historical circumstances, and there were several phases in which that ideal was lost, and it's important to see how it was incarnated in different historical phases, let's say the Middle Ages, Roman times, the Celtic period as well, and now basically which are the chances in modern times to reenact that power of challenging the ego in today's circumstances, fighting for a cause, but the cause has to be something that is transcendent. Then I have Operative Traditions, which is mostly about how to create with first-hand experience at all levels. The first volume is basically about understanding our relation to technique, which is one of the most misunderstood topics in our time, because technique, we tend to confuse it with technology, but technique is a handling, it's a skill. And it's crucial for first-hand experience. Then the second volume is basically it's more philosophical about how to employ this to challenge nihilism, which is basically it's a modern kind of disease of thinking that life hasn't any meaning apart from what comes from outer sources, and how to challenge that in connection to the powers of the earth. Then in the third volume, it's a rediscovery of medieval science and of Gnostic science, and even science that we can relate on a daily basis without getting into a laboratory, and that we can learn many things about science at that level. And then the fourth volume is more about architecture. That architecture is not just buildings, it's not just decoration, but it's a structure of power that impregnates us, even at the levels of the state. Let's say even telecommunication technologies or satellites. That's the kind of the building we're living right now, and it allows people to say, I can't believe that I'm separated from this because I'm part of it, and I have to know how it works, so I know how I work and what I'm doing. People are trying to find many times their ideologies in literature, but I don't give them that chance.